now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Being back here in the woods and in total darkness, I tell you, the stars, they just look so big and bright, almost like golf balls. And the moon, well, it's sure the hell a lot brighter than I've ever seen it before.
Tim, look again, my friend. Those are not stars, and that's not the moon. Those are the Morley lights. They've been showing up around these parts for years.
Okay, sure. I've heard that our late friend Ted Phillips talk about their appearance on the show before. I seem to remember that he thought of them as being under intelligent control and not just your average spook light.
Some people think the farm nearby is like a local skinwalker ranch. All sorts of weird things have been going on there for years. Our guest tonight is going to fill us in on the details.
Well, okay. Well, I suggest then that we get back to the KCOR studios and have some hot coffee and warm up a bit and talk to Ted's right-hand man on what the late researcher was doing way out here. Oh, damn! Here comes another one of those pesky lights. Shoot!
Jesus, they're all around us. Those Morley lights, you can't get rid of them. Oh boy, they can't get rid of us either, Tim.
Nope. No matter how much we try, they try.
That's right. Well, I swear, what a siege! Talk about alien invasion. It's just an unbelievable world we have to exist in these days. The streets are empty, and it's just impossible to get anything done. People are so worried about what's going on, and I can't say that I blame them. What's going on out there in Jasper, Indiana? Are the streets empty, or they normally are?
No. It's Jasper's a fairly good-sized town. It's a manufacturing outlet. So I mean, there's it's always busy. There's a lot of international travel here as well, but that's been all shut down. Because of the quarantine. The governor of Indiana has told everybody to stay in place for at least 2 weeks, and the kids are home from school. My wife, she's working from home for her job, and what I saw something the other day is like, what is it? It's 7 days into the quarantine, and I'm already sick of babysitting my mother's grandchildren.
Well,
that's the way it is here.
Things hopefully will eventually get back to normal, although this could happen again. Back in the 70s, I was editor of Front Page Disasters magazine.
I remember
and
that.
I did I did. It was one of my favorite magazines because it really taught me a lot about history and disasters, and I always snuck in at least one kind of offbeat article, Bermuda Triangle, the brigade that went into a bank of clouds in World War I and never came out again after the clouds lifted. There's always a lot of strange disasters in history, but one of the articles we wrote about was the 1918 epidemic that wiped out something like 50 million people all over the world. So hopefully knock on anything. No, I guess we can't knock on anything. Just wave your hand in the air 6 feet away and hope that nothing like that repeats itself. Anyway, it's time to get on with our show, and I'm really looking forward to the program tonight because it's about a special friend of mine who passed away very recently, and we have one of his associates on to talk about his life's work and what he was doing just before transitioning to the other side. So, Tim, give us a little background information, if you will.
Sure. Well, our guest tonight is Thomas Ferrario. Now, Thomas has worked as a dive master, machinist, and electrical engineer on projects in the United States, China, and Bermuda. Now, he's been an independent UFO researcher since 1969 to 1998, at which point Walt Andrus, founder of MUFON, asked him to become a section director for MUFON. Later, he would go on to be assistant state director for Missouri MUFON, and he then co-founded the MUFON dive team. He then joined Ted Phillips as his assistant in 2006, and later became part of Ted's S.I.U. team, and he assisted Phillips on his Marley Woods projects and his Tetra Mountain Moonshaft project. So, Thomas, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Exploring the Bizarre.
Well, hello, Tim. It's good to be here. Right now, it's good to be anywhere, I think.
I would agree. You know, I hardly know where to begin the conversation. I would assume, and I'm probably incorrect, to some degree, that our listeners know a little bit about the background of Ted Phillips, having been an associate of Dr. J. Allen Hynek and involved in investigating over 400 physical evidence trace cases where these objects had landed. And of course, in recent years, he was staking out this rural area in Missouri known as Marley Woods, where these mysterious phenomena and anomalies had been taking place over the course of quite a few years, I understand, and also involved in the investigation of moonshaft in Europe. But why don't you start out, Tom, by giving us a little bit of background on yourself and how you ended up hooking up with Ted Phillips?
Yeah, Tim, it started in around 2000 when we had the Missouri International MUFON conference in St. Louis, and I always followed Ted's works and wanted to hook up with him. And speaking with him at the time, and he found out I was an electrician, so basically it was a case of I was the grunt, and I had the opportunity to do some of the wiring and camera installation, and it got into be that kind of a relationship at first at Marley, and which I was glad to do, and I might just throw in here, I just have a little announcement. Property owners of Marley Woods have an announcement to make that they permanently want their ranches to be known as the Ted Phillips Marley Woods Research Center. So that's quite an honor. I mean, and they want me to be part of that and to try to carry on Ted's work there. So, I feel so, just, it's quite an honor. It really is. And through the years, Ted and I built a good relationship in Marley, and Ted decided we needed more team members in. So we formed a team and brought in several people, and, we brought in Adam Johnson, which is an outstanding videographer now, producer in his own right, been involved on productions on different Sci-Fi Channel and other channels. And we have Debbie Zieglmeyer, which is the state director of MUFON now, is a team member. She's also a member, star team member of MUFON. And I might just add that Rodney Dillard from Branson is, you might have heard of the Dillards, performers. He's also a team member. And of course, I've got to add, we have one of Ted's great friends, was an advisor to Ted for many years. We have Jacques Vallée, that's on our research. So it doesn't get better than that.
I noticed there's a photo of you and Jacques. I think it's posted on our site along with Ted and the. Now, tell us just a little bit about what goes on for those unfamiliar with the site. What goes on in Marley Woods, and what have you perceived at the location?
I can give you a rundown here, a catalog, and we can go in. We don't have enough time to get into depth in anything, but basically in Marley Woods, we have the light ball phenomena. We have the unseen force phenomena. strange animals, which covers, you just wouldn't imagine the gauntlet that covers. Of late, we have ice tracks, we call it. And, of course, the light beam that we've all experienced out there on us. And then it gets into the real strange things, which we call the horse barn incident, which is quite really bizarre. So what I'll do is I'll let you touch upon anything you sound interested in, and then
okay. Well, let's start at the bottom.
The cattle mutilations and all that. So
let's start at the bottom. Let's start at the bottom of the list and work our way up to the simple stuff. What was the barn incident?
Okay. Basically, what the Hart's barn incident was that one of the ranchers one day called Ted up, and this actually occurred on the Site-2 at Marley Woods, which is a northern site. And basically, Marley Woods encompasses 2 miles east and west and 3 miles north and south. So that gives you some of the idea of the scale that we run around on out there. And basically, with the horse barn, a rancher went out to had his prize horse in the barn, was going to go out and do his chores and run the fences. Checked on his horse. His horse was fine in the barn. 30 minutes later, he came back to the barn. The gate was knocked down. And this is one of Ted's strangest cases. Virtually, the rancher called us in, and the only bad part about this whole deal was he didn't want to speak with Ted about this for 6 months. It was just so bizarre. But virtually what the rancher found when he went in the barn was what had been a perfectly healthy horse 30 minutes earlier. Well, his horse now is turned into horse meat. It's on the upper loft period. It's on the gates. It's on the floor. It's just remnants of this horse. And he said it looked like it had exploded in this barn. So we went in and did some soil analysis, picked up samples, and, the 6 months later was the problem, though. If he'd have got us there earlier, we did see signs of blood and such in there yet. But this so disturbed this farmer that we were in there one time, and when we got back, he had burned the barn down.
Oh, my goodness. Well, now, what have you actually seen there? Now, you mentioned about tracks in the ice?
Yeah. Now, that's a new phenomenon. To be honest with you, I have not been out there in this one of our researchers, Rodney Dillard, and Ted actually had looked into this at it was one of Ted's last investigations. And virtually what you have, and this is high strangeness again, on small ponds, you have tracks that approach 13 inches in diameter with more of a pronounced 3-toe aperture on them. And the strange part of this is you would think a 13-inch track, you're dealing with considerable weight there, And but this was on light ice that wouldn't sustain a person. This would not withstand a person stepping on this ice. They appeared to be melted in the surface of the ice, and in a parallel went across the ice, across the pond, and started coming up the bank, and then that was it. They just disappeared. So,
and how many occasions? Was it just once, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And okay, so now I understand that you are involved in diving. There's other anomalies that are going on in the ponds there.
There were quite a few. I mean, we got into cave exploration out there, and it just covered the gauntlet of high strangeness. We could get into the animals, and I was fortunate that I was with Ted when he had one of his, when the researcher has experiences and becomes part of the research, that's really unique. And I was fortunate to be with Ted Phillips when he had his most astounding experience at Marley.
And what was that?
That
What
gets
took place?
into the light beam phenomena that
All right.
Adam Johnson
give
and
it.
myself has, and
All
Ted
right. Give us
also
a
has.
go. Give us a
Okay.
go with it. Uh-huh.
What that really entailed was Ted and I was going down a long private road.
When would this have been?
This would probably have been in around 2009.
Okay.
And virtually what that was, we were going down a private road on this ranch, 1,200 acres on a private gravel road. No way, it's gated in and out. We were coming out of there on a long night of surveillance, and all of a sudden, this light beam from behind comes up and illuminates the whole interior of our truck to a degree of pure white light. And I hate to, do a parallel to Close Encounters, but that's what it was. And, you could see the dashboard, the grain in the vinyl. And I said to Ted at this point, I said, Ted, are you seeing this? And Ted said, well, hell yes, I'm seeing this, Tom. So I slammed on my brake, we jumped out. And this was a part Ted didn't like to talk about too much years later because he always wanted to do the research before we made any statements. When we jumped out of the vehicle and we looked up where the light source was coming from, all we could see for just a brief instant was a remnant of, I could describe it as just like a blind closing or an aperture in a camera closing, and it was gone. And, that was something that really set Ted back, and it really, really brought to home that part of Dr. Hynek's opinion that Ted had a little bit of problem with over the years, because Ted was a nuts and bolts man. He wanted to get out, do the research. And this was really confirmed. Dr. Hynek, I might tell you, that they had more or less thought that this was all frequency driven, this phenomenon. And basically what that is in layman's term, it means it's dimensional.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that, of course, for a long time, Hynek was a nuts and bolts researcher, as the majority of people were, including, I guess, myself, for a period. And then as things got stranger and stranger, it became obvious that we had to be dealing with something that was more of a paranormal nature. And I know I talked to Ted about this a couple of times, and he had spent all these years investigating the trace cases and looking for physical evidence, and then he slowly realized that the course of the phenomena or the patterns involved were getting away from that and getting into other elements.
Yes, and that's the great thing about Ted's work, is as hard-based as he was doing the true science, and believe me, he beat that into us, about doing the scientific approach. But Ted was always prepared to go where the evidence, the science led him. When this morphed into something more than structured craft, Ted went with the evidence, and that's why so much of the light ball activity just really blew him away. And Ted really hadn't seen anything himself till he got to Marley Woods.
Mm-hmm. Now, when did this first start developing? What year?
Marley Woods, actually, Ted's been going there for actually 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was the last time that anybody visited there?
Probably, I would say 2016, maybe early 17. Actually,
well, are there plans to continue the research there?
Oh yeah. We're getting the team back together. We plan to continue Ted's work. We have the full assistance now of the ranchers, and to be honest with you, I'm in contact with with the property owners every other week, and they want us back down there. And as soon as this damn virus gets burned out,
yeah.
We're going to be down there because.
Now, have they reported anything happening since you've been there last, and to what degree? What's been going on?
Yeah. This stuff seems to read your weakness, and when it knows we can't be down there, it basically goes crazy. One of the property owners said that his grandsons were down there on one of the cabins on the southern side, and experienced the amber lights just to a degree intensity that they've never seen before. And even the strange animals we get out there have increased. So I just want to throw in when Ted and Jacques Vallée had thrown this in, he thought that Marley was so much more than even Skinwalker Ranch, because you name it at Skinwalker, and just when I think we haven't had that, something similar happens.
Well, we did a book recently, UFOs Deja Vu, and it turns out that there are a number of these places. Of course, there's the St. Louis Valley in Colorado, where Chris O'Brien has been investigating all the activity there. There's the area around. There's the area around Sedona, Arizona, that Tom Dongo has staked out for many years there and taken all these incredible photographs. There's, of course, New England has quite a hotbed of activity on and off that Linda Zimmerman has been involved in keeping track of. So there are these patterns, but that's certainly Marley Woods there certainly encompasses all of this. Now, when this first began, was it more simplistic than it is now? I mean, did it start out with small lights and the lights continued to grow? And I believe Ted told me that there was some phenomena that was actually taking place inside the one of the farmhouses.
Yes. The light ball activity, it has morphed and grown, it seems like, into just going into other branches of, I could say the light ball activity goes back decades in this area. I mean, I might, as far back as the ranchers can remember, they used to have picnics and go out at night and watch the lights. And
all right, let me interrupt you here, Thomas. Let me interrupt you because we have to go to our bottom of the break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about Marley Woods and other weird things on Exploring the Bizarre.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. I'm Tim Swartz. Tonight, we're talking about the life, or at least some of the life, of the late, great Ted Phillips. Our guest is Thomas Ferrario. Am I saying that right, Thomas?
That's close enough.
Close enough. Now, when we had to go to our break, you were telling us about, I guess, the early phenomena there at Marley Woods, which consisted of, you say it was amber-colored lights that were being seen?
Yeah, it actually started with the northern mystery light, which is a pretty normal phenomena there. It's really regular, like every other night at least. It's in the same location, goes vertical, goes down, and extinguishes, and that's usually the end of that sighting. But then we have the light ball, the little white balls that go around that are the size of a softball. They go through, and that was actually one of Ted's first sightings when he was out there. Ted was out there, the seasoned professional, with a camcorder in his hand, and he was talking to the property owner. And property owner, Ted says, "Well, when does this stuff start? And the property owner says, well, Ted, it started there, right there in the tree. So Ted stood there watching this object, and the property owner told Ted, he said, well, Ted, I don't know too much about this stuff, but shouldn't your camera be pointed at the object? Ted grabbed his camera, and seasoned professional as he was, and out of a 3-minute sighting, he got like 30 seconds of the end of it, So, and that's like Ted said, this stuff catches you, and when you first see it yourself, it really, from all the years investigating, when you start seeing all this, but yeah, it's the light balls, and then they progressed into larger ones, and like you mentioned, the amber lights are much larger, intense source of amber type of radiation. Then you have the yellow, just yellow, not amber, but yellow, and the ones you really have to watch out for, you're dealing with a huge amount of capability and force, is the red lights.
Really?
When you see the red light balls, you're in for for an experience, because they've been
why is
known
that?
to go through buildings and.
And does anyone know? I mean, how long has this activity been taking place in this area? And perhaps I should say, the current landowners. I mean, is this something that's been in the family for several generations, or are they basically newcomers?
We've gone back close to 100 years. If that tells you anything.
Mm-hmm.
The old timers used to call some of the phenomena, they call sometimes out in the 7-acre field, there's what they call twinkle lights, where they get lawn chairs and go out there and watch it in the summer, that there'd be thousands of little lights that cover this field. And it's just incredible stuff like that, and then the light ball activity. And, we've had the nearby town out there was 2 lawyers, and there actually is a cemetery out there. And there were 2 lawyers that thought this was all a joke, that heard some of the ranchers, they did some of their work, and they came out there one night just to poke fun at them a little bit, and they're out in the cemetery about 8 foot apart. And all of a sudden, and I know that sounds like a bad joke, the 2 lawyers in a cemetery at night, they start seeing eight of these light balls pop up from the ground level out in the middle of the field, go into a formation, and one by one, they instantly shoot about 200 foot between the 2 lawyers and just break their formation, and each one, like they're trying to show these guys something, and just go right between basically their heads out there in the cemetery. And here again, no wind, no smell, well, there wasn't any smell till after this happened, I suppose, but but it's, and then they can exhibit great force. One of Ted's primary cases that that shows the true nature of these things, and there again it involved a red light ball, there's a man that has a junkyard right down the road from the cemetery, and I'm not being smart, it actually is a junkyard. And he's got security cameras up, and it's caught a lot of footage over the years. But one night him and his wife were sitting there and watching TV, and all of a sudden the picture tube cracks, and what he described as coming out of the fissure, the crack in the picture tube, the glass had just literally powdered and shot out on the floor. Well, they run up to the television set to see this effect, and all of a sudden, they're on a 2-level house, I might add, with a garage door in the bottom. All of a sudden, the whole building just shakes, and they get up to the window, look out, and he had a full-size 4-wheel drive Dodge pickup down there with the engine out, locked in gear, and the tires were flat, and this thing had been pushed up the driveway and he had a tow bar on the front of this truck. The tow bar went through the garage door, and the grill of the truck was right up pushing in the garage door.
Wow.
Now, what does that kind of force, and why? And they, we had 5 people got out there and tried to budge this truck. And, Ted said that, there just was no explanation for this, So.
Now that's a lot of power there.
Oh, yeah. And, as Ted said, now, is this something that they're trying to warn people, or is it maybe, did they misjudge? Were they trying to beam this truck up or levitate this truck and they misjudged the weight? Or, there's been other cases where there's been cattle out there that have been, you see, typically the cattle are beamed up, but this time there's been instances where these things been drugged through up and through the treetops and just back and forth until they're just like a bloody pulp and fall down on the ground. Now, did they misjudge their capabilities or the true weight of these objects,
That's interesting, because that's a characteristic that I have seen in other of these kind of like hotspot locations, like the Skinwalker Ranch, is that whatever this is, whatever these energies are, they seem to be extremely callous towards animals. A lot of mutilations, a lot of it just seems they just have it out for animals. But however, it's almost the opposite when it comes to people. You very rarely hear of anybody ever being hurt to any serious extent at these locations.
Right, and if they're, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, we've had a little bit of that at Marley. There's been some side effects that haven't been that pleasant, but it's always, I believe, is an artifact of their craft, their propulsion system, and I do not believe it's intentional. I really don't, as you stated.
So now, when you say craft and propulsion system, what do you mean? What do you think is going on? I mean, do you think that you are dealing with some kind of extraterrestrial intelligence that's using physical craft or what?
We really believe that it's actually both. And I will tell you that the determination that has come out of this over the years that Ted thought he'd never say, that him and Hynek was trying to impress us on him, and finally Ted came around. But what's going on out at Marley, and I put my stock in J.Allen Hynek and Ted over anybody else until they prove me wrong. Mm-hmm. But this is all interdimensional and not interplanetary. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing I can tell you they came out of this with. And, there are physical structured craft that come through. I mean, we've had black cylindrical craft out here. Property owners were going home one night and seeing, you're talking about something that approaches over a football field in length, black cylindrical, jet black craft. And at this point, they actually had seen the light bulbs coming out of one end of this craft. Mm. And that was the only time that was the first and only time we've ever had a structured craft sighting at Marley. And so it's all together out there. It's all related.
Well, talking about Ted himself, what kind of man was he, and what do you have any idea what got him interested in this subject to begin with?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I don't know how many people know this, but Ted had an instinctual interest in this subject when he was a child anyway, but his father introduced him at the time. He was born in Sedalia, Missouri in 1942, and his father thought he had heard a report on the news and knew that Ted would be interested. So his father actually went out, and what it was a World War II fighter pilot that had reported on the news that night that he had a close encounter, a UFO sighting. And his father went and got Ted and took him, and Ted interviewed this man. And the fighter pilot told him in World War II about the close up, I mean, you're talking a amber-colored 30-foot disc, 100-foot from the cockpit of this fighter plane. And like Ted said, it doesn't get any better than that as far as eyewitness, you know. So that's what got Ted keyed into this research, and that's what got him started for the, along with other things, the physical trace aspect of it, the nuts and...
Well, Socorro, so when he was, 20 years old, he took a trip down to Socorro, and that's where he met Hynek.
Right, and he met Hynek, and another gentleman named Ray Stanford was there. You may have heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
He's a good friend of mine. He wrote The Saucer in the Pentagon Closet, I believe it is. It's been so long, I believe that's the book. He gave me a copy. But the three of them actually did Socorro, and Ray is actually, it's so sad because before Ted passed away, Ray and Ted were going to write the Socorro closed case book on that. They actually were going to do, it had never really been done sufficiently, Ted felt, you know. So it's a shame that'll never be done now, you know.
So, and we would be remiss, I know, Tim, if we didn't bring up the moon shaft, which I think that's probably the first thing that I ever read about from Ted. And you know, we're rapidly, as always, running out of time, but maybe you want to give our audience who may not be familiar with this and why Ted was so interested in it.
I can give you a quick, very brief rundown of it. It's one of the most intriguing cases, and unfortunately, Ted, we had a window of opportunity to get there, and that window is shut now. Of course, with Ted passing, he's the only other human being, along with the sheep herders in Slovakia, that were there. So I feel it'll never be found. But roughly, just in a nutshell here, it was Anton Horek was a Czech mining engineer that came from a wealthy family, and the Nazis invaded, took his farm, took every piece of property they had, and Anton Horek's family had the first uranium mines that Madame Curie actually bought uranium from, if you can believe that. It's just, but they imprisoned Anton Horek, and he escaped, and he went to join the Czech underground. Well, one night in their camp, the Nazis attacked them, and 4 of them got away. 1 of them died. 3 of them, besides Anton, got into the mountains. They were all wounded, one to the point almost passing away. And the sheep herder found them, took him, put him in a cave, hid him in a cave. And the one son, the father of the one young boy that came back, brought him some food, bandages and that, and told him, do not go back farther in that cave. It's haunted. And he blessed him, gave him the blessing on, because people in that area are superstitious about caves anyway. Well, Anton, just to kill time, and he was a mining engineer and he'd been in a lot of caves and such, he decides he's going to go exploring. So he works his way back into this cave and crawls into part of the cave, and he has a carbon torch here, and he holds it up, and Ted actually has that torch. He holds it up, and he's seen framed in the rock in stalagmites and stalactites this black onyx-type mirror glass finished object, crescent shape, embedded as far as he can see in the rock, up vertically and down, with a crack, a fissure in the side. So he gets up to it, actually has to take it's so small and tight, he has to actually take most of his clothes off. He crawls through this fissure in this moon shaft, was later named, gets inside it, as he crawls through, he slides down about 3 foot and hits the bottom of this object, which he made a practice of getting back to this thing back and forth for 5 days while he was in this cave. In the meantime, taking care of his men, which one died. And but anyway, he gets into this the last day, and he digs through like 18 inches of dirt and settlement, and he actually finds in the settlement the cave bear, remnants of fossils of cave bear and cave bear teeth. And he puts those in his pocket, which he gave Ted some of those. As he digs through the bottom of this, as he gets to the final bottom where there's dust, small particles, they fly up and hit him in the face, and he feels warm air. So he rakes it away as best he can and gets his light down there. And what he describes as a wavy 1-inch square grid pattern is in this thing with warm air coming up out of it. So he puts his ear down on the grid, and he hears what he describes. And this man is a mining engineer with several degrees, and he knows equipment, he knows natural, what should be and what shouldn't be there. And he describes what he can hear as a sound of large turbines running at a great distance down below, throwing up warm air through this grid pattern. Now, what is that? It makes no geological sense. It's an artificially made structure, but for what purpose? And that basically is the story of Moonshaft as to this day. And Ted actually found the site. He explored on top of it. He got to where he believed was on top of this moonshaft, on top of the rock. And he actually had a tri-field meter, and he had a perfect, with a tri-field meter, every 3-second sweep of a pulse, electromagnetic pulse, underneath him that this thing was exhibiting. Now, that's instrumentality that's self-maintaining for eons. So what is it? And I might tell you that that's not. There are 2 other objects like this reported in different locations. So, but that was our goal, to get back with Ted. And Ted was there once and got in the cave. He feels he found it. He found the bandages in the front of the cave, and basically the Nazis had carpet bombed this area, and they had caused a lot of the roof of this cave to cave in. And Ted was in there with the one grandson of the rancher there, and the son was trying to crawl through all this rubble and that, and Ted backed him off and said, "No, we're going to have to get in there with some equipment, come back with funding and do this right. We don't want anybody hurt." So that basically is where we stand with Moonshaft to this day.
But the location is known. So if later somebody else with some backing can actually go there.
Well, I'm thinking of the fellow from the TV series Josh, who goes
Josh
all over
Gates.
the world. Yeah,
Well,
goes. And they obviously have some funding. He's all over the place.
Yeah, and if he would be prepared, I think this would be a much longer and costly endeavor than what I think he's prepared to do. But who knows? But I will tell you this: it's in the Tetra Mountains, and we do have a map, the rough location. But as Ted told me, Ted was standing 3 foot from the opening, and what it is, there's a piece of slag rock that the sheep herder slid down over this opening, and Ted was standing 3 feet from this, he said. And he said, Tom, he said, if I wouldn't have been there and seen how he took this rock out and where he took it from, I would have never. And Ted was a spelunker. He explored caves all the time in Missouri, and he knew caves well, believe me. And but Ted said, if I had not been there and seen him do that, I don't think I'd have found it. So Will it ever be found? I don't know.
All right. Well, Tim and Thomas, unfortunately, we only have about 3 minutes left in the program. So, Thomas, is there anything that you would like to let our audience know? I mean, you have a Facebook page. You want to direct people to that?
Yeah, we're actually, as I speak, we're going on our UFO physical webpage we had to take down. We had prior commitments, let's just say, from people that I know you'd know, and we took it down, and that was the worst thing we could have ever done. We are in the process of getting a new one up. Anybody interested can go to my Facebook page, which I know you have a link there, and I post what I can there from time to time, and I'm always open for questions. And, you know, I might add that Adam Johnson, as soon as this damn virus breaks, we're going to be back out there, and we've got plans. We're going to get this thing going because Adam has the state-of-the-art video equipment, and we have some backing as far as electronics, new stuff. And, you know, when we were doing this before, I don't have to tell you, Tim, the capabilities of our smartphones would have greatly aided us in what we were trying to accomplish with, you know, such rudimentary equipment out there. But we're going to get it up. We're going to get this done. And all I can tell you is that Adam's a producer, and we're looking at doing something in that line. We've had several offers.
All right, Thomas, I'm going to have to interrupt you here because we have less than 30 seconds to go. Tim?
Well, you know, it has been a great pleasure to have you on, Tom, and we want to continue this at some future date. And great success with your future research on the subject. And thank God for Ted; he did a wonderful job, and heartfelt towards him.
Well, thank you much, Tim, and look forward to talking to you again sometime, and we'll keep you informed.
You bet.
Thank you, Thomas. It's great having you on.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre. You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. Taking back
You're
the
listening
night
to
by
the all-new KCOR, the core, broadcasting from Las Vegas, Nevada, the entertainment capital of the world. Oh yeah, and a little place called
Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.